Order, order. Alan Strickland to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr Stringer. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today. Now, I recognise that procurement isn't usually a topic that gets pulses racing.
Order, order.
Sorry.
Can the honourable gentleman move the motion?
Oh, sorry. I beg to move that this House has considered SME participation in MOD procurement. Apologies, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman, it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today. Now, I recognise that procurement isn't usually a topic that gets pulses racing, but the threats posed to the UK and our allies certainly should. And central to our ability to rise to these challenges is using the defence industrial strategy to unleash the inventiveness, the ingenuity and the creativity of British industry. So today, Mr Stringer, I'll cover three things: our need to respond to the changing face of warfare, adopting a proactive entrepreneurial approach to acquiring the defence supplies we need, and the practical steps we can take to place SME innovation in the service of our national defence. Turning first to our need to respond to the changing face of warfare. Technology has been rapidly altering the nature of warfare at a pace rarely witnessed before. We see this most clearly in Ukraine, where drone technology has rewritten the rules of modern conflict. Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine and the resulting war have shown us the incredible speed at which military technology is advancing. Reconnaissance drones paint detailed maps of occupied territory, helping guide unmanned attack drones in strikes on Russian vehicles and equipment. The role of this technology is now so important that a dedicated branch of the Ukrainian military has been established to deploy it. And here at home, I've seen firsthand the RAF's latest unmanned air systems as part of an Armed Forces Parliamentary Scheme visit. Drones, artificial intelligence and rapidly evolving satellite technology are being used to redefine all aspects of conflict, from the battlefield to the information war to who controls space. So amidst these significant and growing global threats, it's vital that Britain is at the forefront of developments to ensure we can defend not only ourselves, but our allies and interests across the globe. I will give way to the honourable member.
I thank and congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Newton Aycliffe, for having secured today's debate on SME participation in defence procurement, because having run my own start-up construction business in Bonnie, Scotland many years ago, I can appreciate full well that small and medium-sized enterprises are not given their due and rightful importance by government structures and more generally. But does my honourable friend agree that with the government's own green paper noting that there is a need to address the issues that inhibit or prevent growth in the defence sector, the defence contract opportunities must be made more accessible to SMEs in order for us to support their growth and continued innovation?
Alan Strickland.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I thank the Honourable Member for Slough for his intervention, and he is absolutely right. Across the economy, with the government's growth mission, defence must be a crucial sector. But as the Honourable Member has said, too often SMEs are shut out by bureaucratic processes, which I'll be keen to talk more about. Of course, I'll give way.
Shannon.
First of all, can I commend the honourable gentleman for bringing this forward? And he's absolutely right to recognise the importance of SMEs across and what they can do. For instance, in Northern Ireland, at Talis, they invented and produced the N-law, which was what slowed down the Russian advance. They're also to the forefront in cyber security, and all those things are very much important. So does the honourable gentleman agree when it comes to supporting all of the SMEs across the United Kingdom, those 434,000 jobs, Northern Ireland has to be an integral part of that? And I know that's what the honourable gentleman thinks. I think it's also what the Minister thinks, and it really is the way forward.
Order. This debate is well subscribed. It's an hour-long debate, so I'd ask honourable members to be brief in their interventions. Alan Strickland.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I thank the Honourable Member for Strangford for his intervention. Of course, he is absolutely right that the commitment of ministers and the commitment of the Defence Industrial Strategy to sovereign supply must include all parts of our United Kingdom, including very much the excellent capabilities in Northern Ireland. So, Mr Chairman, being war-ready for conflicts we can't predict, that will use technology that hasn't yet been invented, means giving our military the agility and capability to adapt to this changing landscape. And changing the way we think about defence procurement is central to this. So my second point is around adopting a proactive entrepreneurial approach to acquiring the defence supplies we need. Of course, I'll give way.
I'd like to thank the Honourable
Alison
Member
Bennett.
for Newton Aycliffe and Spennymoor for giving way and for bringing this important debate this afternoon. Universal Quantum is a SME based in Haywards Heath in my constituency of Mid Sussex, and they build utility-scale quantum computers. They already work in partnership with leading organisations and investors in the field. Does the Honourable Gentleman agree that the Ministry of Defence should ensure that emerging technologies like quantum computing that are being spearheaded by SMEs like Quantum Universal must be part of the MOD's procurement strategy?
Alan Strickland.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I thank the Right Honourable Member for Mid-Sussex for her intervention, and I absolutely agree. As she says quite rightly, warfare is developing very quickly, and high-tech solutions of the excellent type she described in her constituency must absolutely be part. So, Mr Chairman, when I talk to innovative SMEs at the Durham University Spin-Out Science Park in my constituency, it's clear we need to think differently about defence procurement. Net Park in Sedgefield is home to more than 40 cutting-edge firms, many of whom supply major defence companies and our allies across the globe. This includes Cromec, who invented new ways of detecting radiation and biological weaponry, Filtronic, manufacturing satellite components, and Graphene Composites, who produce ultralight ballistic shields. But their experience suggests we need to do more to remain globally competitive. As other honourable members have rightly said, too often small businesses can feel that UK defence procurement focuses on process at the expense of outcomes and can stifle bottom-up inventiveness with top-down bureaucracy. But our allies show us how we might do this differently. The United States Defence Department takes a broader approach to encouraging and funding military innovation. SMEs are encouraged to approach the government directly with ideas for new products or potential technologies they're developing and to showcase tech solutions to problems that may not even have been considered yet by officials. And in turn, the US Defence Department and its research agency DARPA proactively seek out innovative small companies who offer new ideas and technologies that contribute to tackling future military challenges. Of course.
Order.
Thank you, Mr Stringham. I'm grateful for the Honourable Gentleman from Newton Aycliffe for securing today's debate. Is what he's describing that the MOD needs to completely change its culture as well as its processes in the way that it liaises with these very important and very innovative new companies? Certainly that appears to be the issue in my constituency, where there are many very innovative SMEs.
Alan Strickland.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I thank the Honourable Member for his intervention. I absolutely agree. In my previous life in the housing sector and the charity sector, I've interacted with government procurement across departments. And I think there's a challenge with culture across Whitehall, as the Honourable Member says, of often struggling to deal with the realities of innovative and agile small firms. So it's the approach I described that means the US spends around a quarter of its entire military budget directly with SMEs, much higher than the comparable figure for the UK. Now, in the UK Defence and Security Accelerator does good work in directly using SMEs to fill technology gaps, but Northern Defence Industries, representing more than 300 companies, have called on the MOD to do more to facilitate open call competition. This would allow SMEs to showcase their defence products directly to government without having to wait for specific procurement projects and tenders to be opened. I strongly welcome the intention of defence ministers to use the defence industrial strategy to drive engagement with non-traditional contractors, including SMEs. And I think we have a real opportunity to change the way government thinks about procurement and a real chance to grow the culture that my honourable friend referred to that gives us the wartime pace of innovation that we need. Just as Churchill's groundbreaking military technology labs did during the Second World War, let's use the resources of the British state to harness the inventiveness and ingenuity offered by our world-leading science and tech companies. Turning finally to the practical steps we can take to place SME innovation in the service of our national defence. One of the key things we could look at is the reliance across government on the prime contractor model. This means in practice the Ministry of Defence often uses large contractors to work with SMEs further down the supply chain rather than engaging with them directly. Now, for some years it's been common, Mr Chairman, across government under all parties to shift to working with smaller pools of larger suppliers. This has some obvious benefits, reducing the number of contracts officials need to manage, transferring financial risk and outsourcing much day-to-day contract management. But there's also evidence that this approach can have its downsides. particularly in squeezing out smaller, innovative suppliers. When I worked in the charity sector, the strengthening of the prime contractor approach in delivering the work programme led to a number of innovative charities with a real track record of getting people into jobs, being unable to work with government in the future. So what can be done? Where possible, let's try and reserve complex framework contracts for large projects that genuinely need them, reducing the proportion of tenders available only to prime contractors. Where large contracts are required, can we look at these to see if we can break them down into smaller components more accessible to SMEs? Secondly, where working through a prime contractor is the right answer, could we strengthen the requirement for them to proactively engage with SMEs and simplify contract arrangements? Thirdly, could we open up opportunities for the Ministry of Defence to contract directly with SMEs by removing red tape and doing so with an agile and entrepreneurial mindset? If businesses at NetPark can be direct suppliers to DARPA, the US Defence Department, NASA and other allied governments, I'm confident that through the Defence Industrial Strategy, we too can open up more opportunities for SMEs. I will give way.
He's making an excellent speech, and I'm very grateful for him giving way. And I think the point he is making that, you know, to simplify this, we should all remember that from small acorns, great oaks grow. And that even companies in my constituency, like Rolls-Royce and BAE Systems, will all have started at some point as an SME. And that what he's suggesting today would indeed help those SMEs that we all have in our constituencies to maybe one day grow into those grand, great oaks.
Lawrence Strickland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My honourable friend makes a really important point, that when we've got shop-bought drones in Ukraine making such a difference and technology being used in all sorts of ways, my honourable friend is absolutely right that we need to hunt out and support the small, innovative businesses doing very different and distinctive work in constituencies around the country. So in conclusion, Mr. Chairman, it's been a privilege to briefly set out some of the challenges faced by our innovative SMEs and how the Defence Industrial Strategy can address them. I'm really looking forward to welcoming the Minister to my constituency soon for a business roundtable to discuss these issues in more detail. And I strongly welcome the Government putting growth at the heart of the new Defence Industrial Strategy. The defence sector supports 1 in 60 jobs in the UK, the majority of those outside of London. So this is a real and tangible way of spreading growth, skills and opportunity to all corners of our country. But more than that, Mr. Chairman, if we can improve the way we work with SMEs, it will allow us to build an ironclad sovereign supply of vital defence equipment. Not only will this provide jobs and drive growth, but it will protect us from global shocks in the supply chain. So finally, Mr. Stringer, warfare is changing and we must change with it. Global production is threatened, so we must ensure sovereign supply. And as the threat grows, so must our defence manufacturing base. I look forward to working with Defence Ministers on this important strategy and to welcoming further contributions from honourable members of all parties in this debate today.
Thank you. Right. Thank you. I was just counting so we can get the timing right. Can I remind members that they should bob before, if they wish to speak in the debate. The question is that this House has considered SME participation in defence procurement, and I think we'll start with 3 minutes time limit on speeches. Richard Ford.
Mr. Stringer, it's an honour to serve under your chairship, and I pay tribute to the honourable member for Newton Aycliffe and Spennymoor, who has done us all a great service in securing this debate. I want to use my limited time to draw attention to some fantastic SMEs, one in particular based near Honiton in the southwest, because the southwest has got some absolutely fantastic defence industry. It's really powering up the region in terms of making for some fantastic industrial developments. The Ministry of Defence employs around 33,000 direct jobs in the southwest. But of course, there's also a huge integrated supply chain that supports many more jobs besides. And it must surely be the aim of this new government to have a more innovative and resilient supply chain. In particular, Supercat has produced vehicles in Dunkeswell, in Devon, for over 40 years and is at the forefront of designing and supplying cutting-edge tactical military vehicles. Their high-mobility transporter has been used by British forces in Afghanistan and on UN deployments in Mali. And more than 95% of its supply chain comes itself from UK-based SMEs, 85% of which are in the southwest. It currently has a contract with DE&S, and the Ministry of Defence is buying 70 Jackals and 53 Coyote, as the Minister will know. In the past, I know that there has sometimes been an instinct to buy off the shelf and from overseas. And I think this would be a huge mistake in relation to the procurement of vehicles for the impending Short-Range Air Defence Programme, or SHORAD. Because when we see that instinct to look overseas in the first instance, it weakens investment, it reduces long-term job security, and it ultimately puts future domestic procurement at risk. Supercat has got over 150 skilled workers in Devon, but its future depends on orders that will be delivered beyond November 2025. The Defence Secretary intends for the new Defence Industrial Strategy to boost world-class production and manufacturing, and I understand supporting UK exports is going to be key to that. And I think it's incumbent on us to buy from fantastic companies like Supercat, if we are to look then to countries like Saudi, Czechia and Ireland, to then go and buy the Jackal, as they have. So to conclude, there are some fantastic SMEs. Supercat at Dunkeswell is one of them, and I commend that company to this House. Thanks.
Yeah. Chris MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Strillo. It's a pleasure to serve with your chairmanship, and I'd also like to congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Newton Aycliffe and Spennymoor, for bringing this matter for debate. I wholeheartedly agree that the government needs to work in close partnership with businesses of all sizes, and the government's made it clear to me that it recognises the importance of small and medium-sized enterprises entering the defence procurement programme. I commend the government's engagement with the sector, and I'd like to thank my right honourable friend, the Minister for Defence Procurement, for agreeing to visit Stockton North to meet with local businesses in a region steeped in industrial heritage, resilience and innovation. Through the money spent on defence, the government can satisfy its mission of building more in Britain and increasing skilled jobs in all corners of the country. Teesside and Stockton North are places that not only built the bridges and structures of the past, but are ready to lead the future of our nation's defence capabilities. Teesside industries have long been the backbone of British manufacturing, and today the Teesside Defence and Innovation Cluster stands poised to drive next-generation defence material, and perhaps I can give my right honourable friend, the Minister, a bit of a taster of some of the businesses that she will see on her visit to Stockton North. Take Tracercore, for example, a business based in Billingham, my constituency. Their cutting-edge detection equipment is already being deployed in Ukraine, saving lives and ensuring the safety of soldiers in some of the most dangerous environments on earth. Wilton Engineering, situated on the banks of the Tees, has a proud history of precision engineering and fabrication. They're expanding their work into the defence sector, demonstrating how Teesside's industrial expertise can be the cornerstone for delivering the complex infrastructure projects our armed forces need. And of course, Relion Newtech, a facility with a name that's synonymous with world-class training. Generations of offshore workers have passed through their doors, and now they're preparing the workforce for the next wave of defence projects, ensuring that we have the skills that we need for the challenges ahead. Teesside is a region with a proud history, but more than that, a bold future, prepared to bolster the nation's resilience in an era of increasing global volatility. From the steel forged in Redcar to the innovation being crafted today, we've always been a place of strength and ingenuity. Thank you.
Okay. Jim Allister.
Thank you, Pleasure to serve under you. And I commend the honourable member for bringing this to the House. As has been already referenced, Northern Ireland has a rich history in terms of playing our role in the defence and production necessary. That's very much in the large sector. We have Thales, which of course has led the way in next generation equipment in that regard. But we also have a great underlayer of SMEs. And the primary burden of what I want to say today is that those Northern Ireland SMEs are not getting a fair crack of the whip when it comes to MOD procurement. I say that on the strength of evidence given to a parliamentary inquiry by the ADS group, the trade association, and they set out some very stark figures in regard to the year 22-23, which is the most recent year that we have, when they said that the entire government contracts to Northern Ireland SMEs in that year amounted to a paltry £2 million. In Scotland, it was 29 million, and in the much favoured southwest of England, it was 408 million. So in 2022-23, Northern Ireland, even though 95% of ADS's members are small SMEs, it only got 0.15% of MOD expenditure. Now, how can that be fair? So my basic appeal today to the Department and to the Minister is to bring fairness, a level playing field and equity to the distribution of contracts. We have remarkable skills. In many SMEs, we have many leaders in the digital and technology sector. Their skills are there. They are, some of them, subcontracting to Thales, but they, in their own right, have much to contribute. So I do say to the Minister, we must bring some equity to this. It can never be fair that per capita the spend on MOD in 2022-23 on all contracts was £100 per capita in Northern Ireland, 380 in Scotland and England, and £250 in Wales. Let's get some levelling up. Thank you.
Chris Evans.
Thank you, Mr Stringer. It's a pleasure to serve under your membership, and I congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Newton Aycliffe and Spennymoor, on its bring this timely debate to the House. I also want to welcome quite belatedly my honourable friend, the member for Liverpool Garston, to her place as the Minister. She has an extremely tough job, which was underlined by the former member for Horsham when he had her role in the last Conservative administration, when he said, "Defence procurement is never easy. It is a tough thing to get right. I have not yet found a state anywhere on earth that can really deliver the kind of standards that we all wish to see." And this is underlined by the latest figures from the MOD about government projects, the portfolio in March of 2024, which said that 8 projects are on red, 18 are amber, and only 1 is on green. Within that is a supply chain which will be affected. Many will be small and medium-sized businesses who do not have large bid writing or tendering teams. Under the new Procurement Act, if all goes according to plan, SMEs will spend less time on contracts they do not win, and many tick boxes will reserve for the company that is offered the work. In my experience in opposition, I was often told the MOD has a tendency to change its mind at short notice. The best example of this, and I'm sure the Minister gets sleepless nights if I mention the word Ajax and the programme there in my former constituency, which has wasted £5.5 billion. It's important that the right balance is struck between removing unnecessary red tape and ensuring contractors prove they're up to the job. And I think the most important thing that I learned when I was in opposition, when I spoke to SMEs, was that payments. I've only got angry once in all the time I shadowed the role as Defence Procurement Minister when a Prime stood in front of me and said, "Now we've been finally paid by the MOD, we can pay the supply chain." 18 months later. These are not large businesses. Very often they're 5 or 6 people being innovative, yet they're losing out because the primes are putting other people above their own needs. Of course, there will always be examples of good practice. But one major defence contractor, Mr Stringer, operating here in the UK, was at last count taking an average of 101 days to pay its supply chain. Would any of us accept a 3 or 4 month wait to get paid? In 2020, we saw multiple major defence firms suspended from the prompt payment code for consistently failing to pay their suppliers on time. SMEs across all sectors spend 50 million hours a year chasing payments. If the government means what it says about promoting productivity and growth in defence SMEs, then surely this must be a priority going forward. Voluntary codes are all very well, but they're just that, voluntary. If we are serious about this, we must enshrine redress in legislation. It is unacceptable to pay our SMEs, the lifeblood of our economy, late, and there should be penalties for this. Late payments create cash flow problems, which in turn affect SMEs' access to finance. This cannot go on, Mr Stringer.
Luke Meyer.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Newton Aycliffe and Spennymoor, on securing this debate on such an important issue. And he spoke about the importance of defence procurement for our region in particular, and the potential that we have for strengthening our national economy and our national security. As my honourable friend, the member for Stockton North, says, Teesside in particular has for decades helped build and power our economy, and the steel forged in our furnaces became the bones of bridges, railways and skyscrapers around the world. We once built the world, and today we stand ready to defend it. In addition to the examples that we have heard of Teesside innovators working at the cutting edge, I wish to raise another example in my constituency, that of Tees Components. Tees Components provide the precision machining required to make and service the state-of-the-art equipment our Navy relies on, such as the bow thrusters used in Astute-class submarines. Manufacturers like Tees Components play an integral role in developing local skills through high-level skills training and apprenticeships, and delivering good quality jobs in an area that really needs them, but where talent and tenacity are never in short supply. But Mr Stringer, too often it is companies such as this, with world-leading innovation and a proven track record, that are left to struggle for a seat at the table. It's clear to me, and it's clear to members that we've heard from today, that there is much more to do to open up procurement for SMEs. I agree with my honourable friend, the member for Newton Aycliffe and Spennymoor, when he talks about the need to improve engagement with SMEs. The Federation for Small Businesses has long called for a centrally managed body to oversee MOD contracts, and I wonder whether the new strategic leadership promised by the government in the form of the National Armaments Director can help to disaggregate some of these contracts and deliver the changes that are required. Currently, only 4% of direct MOD expenditure goes to MODs, and indirect involvement in the supply chain often proves unsustainable. While large multinationals typically receive payments within 5 days, SMEs often face late payments, as we've just heard. One solution could be specifically earmarking a portion of the prime contractor bid funding to support SME participation, and could involve measures to mitigate financial risk, such as upfront payments. Mr Stringer, it's my belief that this new Labour government does understand the challenges that we face, and we've already heard some of the measures being taken to reform defence procurement and make it work for Britain. I'm proud that this Labour government has identified defence as a growth-driving sector in our industrial strategy, and I welcome the work underway in the SDR and in the Defence Industrial Strategy to ensure that British business is prioritised in procurement. Mr Stringer, this is about ensuring that we invest in defence, but it's also about ensuring we invest in our communities, in our workers, engineers and innovators who want a chance to contribute to Britain's success. It's about remembering that national security does not begin and end on the battlefield. It begins in the workshops and design labs of Skelton or Sedgefield. Thank you, Mr Stringer.
Steve Young.
Thank you, Mr Stringer, for the opportunity to serve under your chairmanship. And thank you also to the Honourable Member for Newton Aycliffe and Spennymoor for tabling this important debate today. UK defence sector is recognised as being a global leader. Government defence spending supporting over 400,000 jobs across the UK, and indeed many of those in my Mansfield constituency. I therefore welcomed the Defence Secretary announcing plans to develop a new defence industrial strategy with the aim to produce a better, more integrated, more innovative and more resilient defence sector in the UK. And I therefore want to make the point loud and clear to the Minister here today that in my constituency of Mansfield, we're very well prepared to support this government, the government in this mission, and indeed we're already doing so. I already would like to draw particular attention to local business Glenair, which I will be visiting next month. This business employs around 1,000 people in my constituency and works to supply products which are critical to our defence including military aerospace, nuclear and military land systems. It is these innovations which Glen Eyre are driving forward. They are, in fact, on the cutting edge of innovation, and so I'm pleased that the government wants to do all it can to support this industry here in the UK, and therefore companies such as Glen Eyre. They are a fantastic example of an employer that's investing in their workforce. This year they took on almost 60 apprentices across a wide range of disciplines, not just in engineering, but in many other areas too, established by this company well before the apprenticeship levy, because they recognise how important well-supported, well-trained and highly skilled workers are to their business. And that's why it's crucial for us as a government to also invest in further and higher education. To summarise, I think the main points: one, that we already have some fantastic innovative businesses here in the UK. Investing in education and looking how we can be more innovative will make a very significant difference to delivering on our objectives. And then third and finally, that in Mansfield we're unashamedly ready to support the government in doing so. During the election campaign last summer, I promised to deliver on local missions for the people of Mansfield. One of them was to do everything in my power to help provide a stable and growing economy with good quality jobs for everyone. And with that in mind, I invite the Minister to come and visit Mansfield so that she can see for herself the fantastic opportunities that are available, and work together so that we can play our part in delivering that objective.
Fred Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer. It's an honour to serve under your chairship, and can I thank my honourable friend for securing this important debate. I know he's a huge champion for SMEs in his constituency and for national security in general, so thank you very much. I'd like to begin by just pointing out that defence primes are not evil. They're not set out to harm British national security. They do amazing things, and some of the things we're most proud of in Britain, sovereign capabilities, are delivered by those very primes. And it's no surprise that a huge proportion of defence spending goes to them, because the most expensive things on the British balance sheet are some of the capabilities they deliver, and that give us our unique edge in the world. In the context of SMEs, primes don't have to be negative either, because they can offer to SMEs something we all know is missing, which is an ability to communicate with government. And by joining with primes, SMEs are sometimes able to market themselves, advertise their ability with government in a way that otherwise they wouldn't be able to do. Yeah, gladly.
I'm grateful, and just to reinforce his point, I think the way that Supercat has teamed up with Babcock in Plymouth in recent years to scale up its skilled workforce by 60% is one example of what he's describing.
Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer. The honourable member is absolutely correct. Aside from not quite in my constituency, in the neighbouring constituency of Plymouth, Sutton and Devonport. But otherwise, yes, and I would agree. Primes can also, in the terms of SMEs, offer a service to government and to the MOD in that if we had a massive change in system, which would be extremely hard to execute, and suddenly the MOD was able to procure directly from primes across the country, from SMEs across the country. If that happened, we'd then have an enormous challenge of integrating those different capabilities into a usable platform. So half of those things wouldn't be able to talk to each other. They'd be made to do their one task, and you'd then try and put on top of it a second radar system or some piece of satellite that could speak down to whatever comms link you're using. Whereas, and that, by the way, that's enormously expensive. Primes can do that. So primes can go to government and say, you've got a demand signal to do something rather than like have a particular capability. So to, for example, monitor, let's say, the North Sea. And primes can then go out to SMEs and gather various different bits of capability, which honourable members have highlighted so fantastically from across their constituencies, and knit that into one big package to sell to government. It's going to feel more expensive and it's going to feel slower to government, but it could be long-term cheaper. in some instances. That said, I am overwhelmed almost daily now by individuals in the UK defence industry reaching out to me and colleagues on LinkedIn or on MPs' emails, begging for the government to listen to what they are offering, because they are patriotic people who think they can save us money and give us strategic advantage by delivering a piece of capability we are currently spending often obscene amounts of money on, and which sometimes doesn't work very well and produce the effect we want it to produce. And I would love the Minister to give us a sense of what is this government going to do differently from previous governments to actively offer a forum for those SMEs to pitch their capabilities. I am immensely proud of the Secretary of State and for the Minister who joins us today for their work on this so far. Thank you.
Helen Maguire.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Stringer. And I congratulate the member for Newton, Aycliffe and Spennymoor for securing this really important debate. Small and medium-sized enterprises are the backbone of the UK economy and a vital part of our defence industry. These businesses bring agility, innovation and high-quality jobs to communities across the country. Yet despite their immense potential, SMEs face significant barriers to fully contributing to our national defence procurement. There is a real and long-standing problem across the MOD's defence procurement system. It's beset by inefficiencies, including delays, overspends and rigid processes. Liberal Democrats believe it's time for a fresh, ambitious approach to tackle these challenges. Our plan focuses on flexibility, accountability and long-term strategy. We would replace the current rigid system of defence reviews with a more flexible system of continuous reviews of security threats and evolution of defence plans. This would enable procurement to evolve in response to emerging security threats and rapidly advancing technologies. Further, we would integrate defence procurement into a comprehensive industrial strategy. This would ensure a reliable pipeline of equipment procurement, safeguard jobs and skills and promote UK-based businesses. Collaboration with NATO and European partners is key to developing cutting-edge technologies and ensuring interoperability. But for the areas of defence where we wish to maintain our sovereign capabilities, we must achieve this through greater collaboration with domestic SMEs. The survival of SMEs, like small technology businesses, is dependent on their ability to develop and deploy innovative products at extraordinary speed. They are configured for agility, fast-paced decision-making and recruitment of high-value talent. By contrast, government organisations, including the MOD, operate within more complex mandates and constrained budgets. It's neither realistic nor efficient for the government to attempt to replicate the private sector's pace of innovation. So the MOD must improve its procurement processes to leverage the agility of SMEs. Yeah, we'll give way.
I thank my friend, the Lib Dem Defence spokesperson, for allowing me to intervene. Does my honourable friend agree that with the introduction of the Procurement Act intending to make it easier for small businesses to access public sector procurement, that it is now for the government to clearly set out what other support will be made available to already busy SMEs to remove the complexities and barriers as they seek to gain contracts within the pipeline?
Helen Maguire.
Yes, thank you for that intervention. I absolutely agree, and I'll be coming on to that further later in my speech. So by focusing the MOD's limited R&D budget on adapting high-potential dual-use technologies for defence purposes, the MOD can maximise innovation while delivering value for taxpayers. Furthermore, by involving more SMEs, we can manufacture critical components locally, reducing security risks associated with reliance on non-NATO or non-European allied suppliers. This approach also spreads the economic benefits, stimulating regional economies, creating jobs and fostering innovation. Defence contracts provide stable revenue streams, enabling SMEs to invest, scale up and contribute more broadly to the economy. The previous Conservative government let small businesses down. They created chaos and uncertainty when businesses needed certainty and stability, especially in the aftermath of the pandemic. Liberal Democrats are fighting for a fair deal for SMEs, starting with overhauling the unfair business rate system and providing more support with energy costs. The current state of SME participation in MOD procurement is underwhelming. Only around 5% of the procurement budget is allocated to SMEs. 42% of contracts go to the same 10 suppliers. This is simply not good enough and we can do better. So we welcome the announcement of a new defence industrial strategy and we hope it is completed swiftly so that businesses can plan. I especially welcome that one of the 6 priorities of the strategy is prioritising UK businesses and another involves fostering a more diverse community of suppliers, including non-traditional SMEs. We will hold the government to account on sticking to these priorities. Ultimately, I want to see the outcome of this strategy turn into meaningful action. SMEs need simpler access to contracts, reduced bureaucracy, including helping overcoming defence-related banking challenges, and support to compete on a level playing field with the larger suppliers. It's time for the government to unlock the potential of SMEs to fuel local economies, increase the UK's defence sovereignty, and lead on innovative technologies. Thank you.
James Cartledge.
Thank you, Mr Stringer, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And may I congratulate the Honourable Gentleman for Newton Aycliffe and Spennymoor on an excellent and very timely debate. But if I may say to him, as someone who ran an SME, that was involved in public procurement and was a Defence Procurement Minister, this is a subject that gets my pulse racing, I must say. And maybe I'm an anorak in that sense, but it certainly does. Particularly, as he rightly says, when we consider the changing nature of warfare and its extraordinary impact on procurement. And of course, we're talking about Ukraine. And we've had much criticism of procurement in recent years. The Minister of the Armed Forces was pretty damning yesterday, but I am incredibly proud of what we did in government, uniquely in the world, in standing by Ukraine, what you saw as one of the greatest procurement achievements in our recent history as a country. The NLAW, mentioned by the Honourable Gentleman for Strangford, made in Belfast, which we shipped out there, despite legal advice to government that we shouldn't do that. Ben Wallace took the risk with the full support of then Prime Minister Boris Johnson. We stood by them, and if we hadn't done that, they may have capitulated far earlier, and that would have been terrible for world peace. And it reminds us about the ethical importance of supporting the defence sector, because peace is the #1 ethical goal of the UN, but to have peace you need defence, and for that you need a thriving defence sector. Whereas what we see too often is this narrative around ESG, that somehow you shouldn't invest in defence. As I understand it was in the Times, 20 defence companies have been either advised against attending careers fairs because of safety fears, or decided to cancel them under pressure, which is absolutely shocking. So I have two specific questions for the Minister on ESG. Can she confirm that in reviving the Higher Education (Freedom of Speech) Act 23, they will seek to strengthen how protest against defence companies is dealt with on campus? But also, the Chancellor, and I agree with her on this, she mentioned yesterday in a speech about the importance of opening up investment in the UK from our pension funds. She's 100% correct on the importance of that. But can she confirm that we will be clear to those pension funds that investing in defence is ethically positive because it helps support the security of our country and the wider world? Just a couple of economic points, if you like. When we talk about investment, we must understand the importance of laying out that pathway to 2.5% quickly, because ADS, which is obviously the trade body for SMEs in defence, is worried about the current procurement freeze, tightening, whatever you want to call it, in the MOD, which is undoubtedly happening, and the impact that is happening on cash flow and confidence among those defence SMEs. And on the second point, of course, when they are facing those higher tax costs and regulations and so on. So I do hope they can bring forward that pathway to give businesses the confidence to keep investing in the defence sector. But equally, there is much to be positive about. And the Honourable Gentleman was absolutely right to talk about the way that because war is changing, procurement needs to change, and SMEs must play a huge part of that. And there are some features of the integrated procurement model that I announced, which I think would be particularly important. One is export, which was mentioned by the Honourable Gentleman for Honiton and Sidmouth. He mentioned the Jackal, and he mentioned the Czech Republic. That was my first ever trade visit. The Jackal was proudly on display, and I sincerely hope that they are successful in concluding that deal. And it underlines how to support the defence sector. You need to have international market success, because our market is not big enough to support our defence sector. But the other and perhaps most important point, which several colleagues have referred to, is accessibility for SMEs. This point that they can feel it's difficult to, if you like, penetrate the defence procurement system. So, many times as Minister, I spoke about the most uplifting experience I had in procurement, which was visiting an SME in October 24, who had developed a cutting-edge drone being used in Ukraine, very sensitive obviously, but cutting-edge capability. And when I was there, they were getting feedback within hours, to put it bluntly. Now, to get that, you've got to have access to the frontline data, obviously, and that is So you have to have access at a secure level. And so what we wanted to develop was far more engagement with defence SMEs at secret. And I strongly recommend to the Minister continuing that, because they have to know what's happening, so you create this feedback loop between industry and government. Just finally, on dual use, Mr Stringer, something I was determined to do, and if I'd had more time maybe would have got further with it, was to recognise that there are so many brilliant companies in our economy who probably don't think about getting involved in defence, if we're honest. We need to fire up that talent base, get them involved in defence procurement, particularly in areas like software, because that's what will drive procurement going forward. But if we get the funding in place, we back our defence companies and we send the signal that investing in defence is morally right because of the threats we faced, then we can look forward to a bright future for our defence companies.
Thank you. Just before I call the Minister, we've gained a few minutes, so if she could leave a couple of minutes at the end for the proposer to wind up. Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr Stringer. I will certainly do that. And I must say it's been an excellent debate, and it's good to see so many colleagues here to participate in it, even if they couldn't perhaps make the length of speech that they'd hoped. But nonetheless, everybody was able to get the nub of what they wanted to say into the debate. And for that, we have the Honourable Gentleman for Newton Aycliffe and Spennymoor to thank, because it's he who obtained the debate, and I congratulate him for it. I very much welcome this debate on the involvement of SMEs in defence procurement, because this is an issue, as he said, and as many members have said, that's essential, of critical importance to the future of our military and to our capacity to deter potential adversaries. We all know that Britain faces acute and growing dangers, conflict in the Middle East, war in Ukraine, tensions in the Indo-Pacific, and we also know that our armed forces have been underfunded and hollowed out over the last number of years, which is why we're having a root and branch strategic defence review to assess these threats and develop the capabilities we need to counter them. It's why we're boosting spending this year by £3 billion in real terms, just under, and why we are going to set out a pathway to 2.5% of GDP on defence. We're not going to repeat everything that happened in the House yesterday in respect of this, but I realise that across the House it's a matter that everybody is concerned about. And our armed forces are only as strong as the industry and procurement system that supports and equips them. And the procurement system itself was described during the last Parliament by the Public Accounts Committee as broken. And so it is clear that there are changes that need to be made. And my honourable friend, the member for Newton Aycliffe and Spennymoor, set out some of what he wants to see, including the ability to respond more swiftly to the changing face of warfare. And a number of members, including the Honourable Gentleman for South Suffolk, have set out some of what they've seen during their time in this place at that kind of effort being achieved, particularly in respect of the support we've been giving over the last few years to Ukraine. And there's nothing like an emergency situation like that to make sure that we innovate. And it's important that we actually learn the lessons of that innovation for our more general procurement. I am particularly concerned, as is my honourable friend, to get SMEs more involved in our procurement processes, and he made a number of suggestions, as did other members around the chamber, about how we might be able to do that. The Honourable Gentleman for Honiton and Sidmouth mentioned Supercat, who I saw at last week at the International Armoured Vehicle Conference, and everything he said about them is correct. They're an excellent example, and he was able to provide the Chamber with numbers of jobs and improved economic growth in his area that they're able to provide. And that's precisely the kind of thing that we want the new Defence Industrial Strategy, when it's published, to be able to pursue and do better with. Now, the Honourable Gentleman, the member for North Antrim, said quite rightly, and he quoted some numbers, that the MOD spend in Northern Ireland is less than it is in other regions of England, as opposed to in Northern Ireland. And he's quite right, but there's no indication that SMEs over there have less ability to innovate or to provide the kind of services that MOD needs. And so I hope to be able to do precisely what he asks and increase that number. I will be visiting in due course and not too long into the future, and I hope that to be able to hear from some of the SMEs that he was talking about and that the Honourable Gentleman for Strangford, no longer in his place unusually, also raised. Now, my honourable friend, the member for Stockton North, talked about the Teesside Defence and Innovation Cluster and some of the companies that he's aware of in his constituency. He's right, I did promise him a visit, and we're trying to organise it now, as far as I'm aware, at least I think that's the case, because it's tremendously helpful for me when I'm considering what proposals we should take forward in the Defence Industrial Strategy when it is published, to hear directly from SMEs about their experience. And I've already done a certain amount of that. I'm doing some more of it between now and the end of the consultation, as much as I possibly can, in as many regions and all of our nations around the UK. And so I hope to be in a position to get a very good sense of what the big issues are that smaller companies are raising with us. My honourable friend, the member for Caerphilly, made some points about late payment, which he was very passionate about, and I know not for the first time it's something that he's raised in parliamentary settings. I'll just say that we do recognise the importance of fair payment practices. Direct suppliers to the MOD are required to sign up to the Prompt Payment Code to be eligible for MOD contracts. And the Director General of Commercial recently wrote out to large suppliers to remind them of that responsibility. Some are better at making sure they comply with it than others. My honourable friend, the member for Plymouth Moorview, made some points about let us not decide that all primes are evil, I think was the word that he used, which I thought was going a bit far. But the point that he was making is that they're not the enemy. They can be very much part of the solution. And there are good practices where primes have been very clear about involving and bringing on small and innovative, agile companies. There are some examples that aren't so good as well, and I think we need to make sure that we improve the way in which small firms engage with MOD contracts, whether that is directly or whether it is through contracting with a prime on a particular programme. The honourable gentleman for Mansfield asked me to visit, and I think I've offered to visit absolutely everybody else in the chamber, so it would be churlish of me, Mr Stringer, if I were to say no to him. I can't promise it up before the end of February, but I can promise to come and see some of what he had to, what his constituency has to offer. I know obviously it has a long history of engineering and of working very hard in tough industries over the years, and so I look forward to being able to do that. He mentioned a particular firm which he's visiting himself shortly that is supplies products across domains, from what he was saying, which sounds like it'll have a very interesting time. I look forward also to making sure that I can deal with the points that the Honourable Lady for, I think it's Epsom and Newell, is it? Epsom and Newell, I'm still not quite there with everybody's constituencies, Mr Stringer, but I do my best. I know that she has some particular points that she made. I was glad to hear that she said she was in favour of a comprehensive industrial strategy, because the defence industrial strategy that we're going to bring forward is indeed part of a countrywide thorough industrial strategy across all departments and across the whole country. And she will recall that defence was identified in that as part of, as one of the 8 growth sectors that we ought to rely on in implementing that industrial strategy to improve economic growth and to spread prosperity across the nations and regions. And that's what we want to do. In fact, the defence industrial strategy that we will bring forward will act as the action plan for that, with a sector plan for that broader strategy. So we will be joining up. Now, the honourable gentleman, the member for South Suffolk, raised an issue with me about protest-related activity on university campuses and what that means about the ability of defence companies to recruit the best talent. Now, this government does recognise the crucial importance of attracting new entrants to the defence sector, and obviously university campuses are a way of engaging with young people who might either want to work for existing companies or set up their own, and who might want to get involved in the defence sector. We do need to do that. We're working closely with the Department for Education and Skills England to address the skills landscape in the defence sector, and part of that is also about making sure that young people at education institutions such as universities can get the full range of information at things such as university careers fairs. And so I hope that between all of us we'll be able to make an improvement to the extent that there's a problem that was identified by the Times. Yes, of course, Bruce. Yes.
I think what everyone wants to see from the defence sector is the idea that we champion the, if you like, ethical value of investing in defence because it delivers security, and therefore challenging those who protest as if somehow these companies are out there to harm us.
Well, I agree with that, and I think that there's probably not too much. There wouldn't be too much disagreement across the House of Commons about that, and so I think it's something that we can agree on and try and make sure that we get that sense out there. I think increasingly, as people see the dangerous world that we're increasingly living in, that there is the capacity for any concerns that there might have been about defence in the past to be seen properly in context, and that actually defence is a key part of our ability to be able to continue with our way of life as we choose in a democracy. Mr. Stringer, I've got a couple of minutes left before I hand over again to my honourable friend, the member for Newton Aycliffe and Spennymoor. I think it's been an excellent debate. And in fact, in many ways, we haven't had enough time to get through all the contributions that colleagues around the chamber would have wanted to. But it's helpful for me as I go about trying to deal with our defence industrial strategy, to hear from colleagues, to get around the country as much as I can to listen directly to SMEs, to make sure that the policy prescriptions that we come out within the defence industrial strategy are the right ones, that we can change procurement in a way that will assist SMEs to have full involvement as they wish in defence procurement, and that we can spread prosperity and economic growth across all of our regions in England and all of the nations of the UK, because that is the prize in front of us, and that is, Mr. Stringer, what we can do if we get this right. Thank you very much.
Alan Strickland to wind up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I start by thanking the Minister for her strong leadership on this vital issue? We've discussed these matters on a number of occasions. I know the Minister is committed to really driving this priority through the Defence Industrial Strategy and the wider Defence Review, which I strongly welcome. Can I also thank honourable and right honourable members around the Chamber today for, I think, what's been a really strong shared sense of purpose about the importance of tapping into our innovative small businesses to meet the challenges we face. We've heard around the real pride in defence contractors around the country from the members for Honiton, Sidmouth, Mansfield and Middlesbrough South and East Cleveland. The importance of ensuring economic growth across the country is driven by the defence industry for the honourable members for Strangford and North Antrim, and really important points around payments for the honourable member for Caerphilly. So I thank the Minister, I thank everybody who's taken part today. We'll just conclude, Mr. Stringer, by saying we've all acknowledged that the global threat is growing, it's becoming more complex, it's evolving much more quickly. And I think there's been broad agreement that part of that answer is making sure we can really open up more opportunities to small, nimble, agile, high-tech SMEs across the United Kingdom who can be at the forefront of helping us and our allies to meet this challenge.
The question is that this House has considered SME participation in defence procurement. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting stands adjourned.